more, I'm DC Becker. I own a company called Titan Group of New York. We are hospitality consultants, and we're going to talk through that a little bit because, frankly, with the greatest respect for you and Professor Moser, the consulting term tends to sort of put me and my business in a bit of a box, which I don't necessarily like to always reside in, but we'll talk about that. First, I have to tell you, I'm a little bit embarrassed by this. Professor Moser was kind enough to invite me to talk to one of his classes last spring, and I did so, and from my perspective, it went well. As I tend to judge everything, it's always about, would you go back or are you invited back? So I have to assume that last spring went tolerably, because Professor Moser has invited me back to see you this morning. So thank you, John, and thank you to you. I appreciate being invited in. I mean, let's be real, I know that you didn't each invite me. You're being polite to me, and I appreciate that too. But in all seriousness, I'm very happy to be here. Whether Professor Moser believes it or not, I've been looking forward to this. And I say it like that because of something a little bit embarrassing that happened with me, which is when John asked me to come back, this was perhaps August or early September, some time ago. And I'm pretty good about managing my calendar. I have to, because my business is largely me, and we'll talk through that too. So I have to be able to make sure I get stuff on my calendar, I don't double, triple book myself, and so on and so forth. So I did. Friday, November 4th, 11:30 a.m., no problem. Monday of this week, I think I got a follow-up email from John just saying, DC, are we still good for Friday? And I'm happy that it was email and not a visual, because I totally lost track of this. It was on my calendar. I did exactly as I said. I had put it down for Friday morning. It was there, but I had totally zoned on the fact that November 4th is actually upon us. I don't know what I was thinking, so you can sort of imagine what I said when I opened John's email. That's kind of universal. But the good news is with John's help and so forth, I think I've gotten it together. In about an hour or so, you'll decide whether I have or not. But in all seriousness, like I said, I'm very happy to be here with you. I wanted to do this and was appreciative of Professor Moser inviting me back because I know that I'm in a very small space, not because I'm a hospitality consultant, there are plenty of those, and we'll talk about that too, but because I love what I do. I really do. I have tough days like you do. I don't love every single day, I promise you that, but I really love what I do. And because of that, I think it makes it easier, frankly, to be hopefully effective at what I do. And we'll talk through that too. But my point is, I have a distinct advantage over a lot of people in the workforce, no matter what they do, which is I really like what I do. I've been in the hospitality business all of my professional career. It's the only thing I've ever done. So over 35 years of hospitality stuff. So amongst other things, I don't know how to do anything else. So if I'm not reasonably acceptable in terms of what I do here, I have a problem because it's not like I could just jump into something else. I couldn't. It's all I've ever done. The good news for me, as I said, is I really like what I do. We've been able to build a bit of a business through that, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about this morning. So as much as I am here as a quote-unquote guest lecturer, and yeah, that is what I'm here for, I prefer to look at this as a guest conversationalist. And what I mean by that is I implore you, ask questions, stop me. If I confuse things, if I trip myself up, straighten me out, please, let's talk. It's much better for everybody if this is a conversation. It's my responsibility to lead the conversation, and I'm fine with that, and I think I'm prepared to do that, but I would very much appreciate your input, your questions, your experiences as well. Okay? So with that, let us proceed. A couple of minutes just to talk about what we are and who we are, and there is a we, and as much as I'm sitting here already just talking about little old me, I do want to explain to you that Titan Group of New York, LLC, is not just this person that you see in front of you. In fact, I'm literally only half of what Titan Group is. I have a business partner who, very, very fortunately for me, is my wife. And that, I realize, immediately creates some sort of interesting sort of dynamics. Really? His business partner is his wife? How does that work? Well, let me tell you exactly how that works. I met my wife in this business. We both at the time were working for Hilton. She is, unlike me, a hotel school graduate. She graduated from the FIU, Florida International University School of Hospitality Management. So she was frankly more of a committed hotel person than I've ever been from the standpoint that she knew before she went off to college, if that's what she wanted. I had a sense that that's what I wanted, but wasn't so sure, and went to a small liberal arts school in Pennsylvania and came away with that always powerful, always compelling major in political science, which is kind of a AKA for I don't know what I want to do. So I could do English, I could do history, I could do political science. I chose political science. With that, I had a sense in all seriousness that I wanted the hotel business. I really did. And I had worked summers even during that time when I was in college. I was living in Westchester County. And there's a Hilton property in Rye, the Rye Town Hilton, that I worked at summers. So I knew that this was the direction that I wanted, not so much so to say I'm going to sign up for an academic program like you folks have. I don't regret having not done that because it's worked out pretty well for me. But I am, even now, 35 years later, envious of you, which I suppose has something to do with why I'm very happy to come back and talk with you, because I think it's great that you have such a clear idea of where it is that you want to go. My wife did. Interestingly enough, my two daughters, who are, my oldest daughter actually lives here in the city, she's 30, just recently married, went back for an MBA, never ever had an interest in the hospitality business. My younger daughter is in business school now, going for her MBA in Virginia, never ever had an interest in the hospitality business. We're fine with that. It's not a personal thing. My wife and I don't, there's no bad feelings amongst the four of us. We're very close. It just sort of illustrates the point to me that if you know what you want, good for you, and that you can zone in on it and pursue it. I envy you that. If you don't, you want to leave yourself as wide open and be as best positioned as possible. I feel very good that our daughters, by virtue of their education, they went to really good schools. They went to the University of Virginia and Vanderbilt. They've come out now, they've done or are doing MBAs. They don't know specifically what they want even at this point, but they know enough to know that they need to equip themselves the best possible way. And so do you. So I envy you that. I think it's a great place for you guys, you folks, to be in. With that said, I want to talk a little bit about my business partner, who is my wife. Let me just do that first, and then we'll jump back. So I'll talk about Norma, my wife first, ladies first, and then we'll talk a little bit about myself, so I can give you a bit of background as to who exactly Titan is. Norma, my wife, has over 30 years of experience in the luxury and upscale hotel and resort space. She's worked for brands, and you can read what's here. She's worked for fine dining restaurants. If you're familiar with Blue Hill right here in Greenwich Village, and then several years ago, Blue Hill really set the restaurant universe on its ear when they created Blue Hill at Stone Barns up in Westchester, which, as much as today in the restaurant world and in the hospitality world, the phrase farm to table is very, very common. In fact, it's overused. Blue Hill at Stone Barns, and a guy by the name of Dan Barber, whose concept it is, who was the owner of Blue Hill here in the village and there, and has now become truly a celebrity chef in his own right, he created that which we all accept today as this thing, which is farm to table. Norma, my wife, opened Blue Hill at Stone Barns as their director of operations. Tremendous experience. If you haven't seen, or if you don't know of Blue Hill at Stone Barns, I encourage you, just from the standpoint of an interest perspective, to study, not study up on it, but research it a little bit. It's on this magnificent property in Cantico in Westchester, owned by the Rockefeller Foundation. David Rockefeller himself was very involved in the design and the creation of it. It was really a passion of his. And we were fortunate enough in the form of Norma, my wife, to be a key part of the creation of it and the opening of it. So she's done that. She came out of Blue Hill, and if that wasn't difficult enough, she decided that she needed to take the next difficult step and opened her own restaurant. We were living in Westchester at the time, as I mentioned, and in little old Armonk, New York, she opened this thing called Cafe Norma, which, as a very small offshoot of her experience at Blue Hill and Stone Barns, was all natural, all organic, sustainable, in the form of a small cafe on Main Street in Armonk, New York. This was from 2005 to 2010. It's not a long time ago, but you need to please understand that in 2005, especially out of the major cities, out of New York, out of Chicago, right, whatever you want to choose, nobody knew what farm to table was. Everybody thought they knew what organic was. Frankly, even today, everybody thinks they know what organic was. They don't. But the point is, when she opened this place in Armonk, it was, for its own little small space, 8 seats, primarily grab and go, takeaway stuff, prepared foods for dinner, that type of stuff, all organic, all natural. Nobody else was doing that. And in its own small space in Armonk for those 5 years, it was tremendously successful. So if I sound like I'm very proud of my wife's operation or her vision, I am. I should also tell you that because it was a small business, and to the point of being an entrepreneur, rather than consulting ties directly to this, it was a business that pulled all of us in. I can tell you that I spent a lot of time, even with my quote-unquote real job over here at Cafe Norma, working behind the scenes, as did our daughters, as did our extended family, etc. So it's sort of typical of entrepreneurship that you need to always sort of be careful what you wish for, because the busier you get, the more issues, the more opportunities are presented to how do I deal with this? How do I manage it? So it goes with the territory. It's a good problem to have, but it's a challenge nevertheless. She's also been very, very experienced in what we refer to as project management, design, and construction. Project management is a little bit euphemistic. It's kind of a broad title. Project management is in the hospitality world, primarily hotel, but it could be restaurant too. It is design, it is construction, it is architectural work, it is interior design work. Most of what Norma does today in our projects, still in the luxury and upscale space in hotels, is working with the owners and the developers on the physical design and the construction of these hotels. She's not an architect, she's not an interior designer. She knows that stuff very well. She is the linkage between the owners, who are our clients, which we're going to talk about, and the operators, and in this case, the builders of hotels. A very quick, for instance, is the fact that a major project that we are involved with now, one of several, that Norma is really far more into today than I am, is a new luxury hotel that's being built here in Manhattan, 1185 Broadway. It's Broadway and 28th. If you're wondering why you haven't seen anything, it's because right now they have knocked down what used to be there. It was a parking garage. This is sort of catty corner from the Nomad Hotel and the Ace Hotel, a block down from where Virgin Hotel is going in, if you're familiar with that at all. It is going to be a luxury hotel. The deal is not signed yet, so no one knows and no one can know that it's going to be a Ritz-Carlton, but it's going to be Ritz-Carlton. So you'll hear more about it, but you didn't hear that here.
Sworn to secrecy.
Yeah, we wipe that out. We'll wipe that off the
Right.
but seriously, you're going to be hearing a lot more about this project. This is not somebody's idea. This is not a vision. This is going to be in the ground in the first quarter of 2017, due to open in 2020. My point is that's an expertise, that's a talent that Norma brings from all of her years in our industry, which I don't have. And what it does is it enables us to sort of grow our business because we don't have a lot of overlap. Norma's specialties in our industry are different than mine. And that's a good thing for us because it lets us do more stuff. With that said, I'll spend a minute just talking about my own background. So I started Titan several years ago and then frankly got away from it, put it on a shelf. I started it 2003, 2004 as an independent consulting practice to support upscale and luxury hotels because that was my own expertise for 30 plus years with brands that you see, with independent hotels that you see, with management companies like Interstate Hotels. When I launched Titan 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was, Interstate Hotels and Resorts, who are today the world's largest independent hotel management company, was a client of mine. They came to me because we knew each other, because I had worked for them in the past, and said, DC, we are looking at a portfolio of hotels in the Middle East, in Egypt to be specific, and we need some help doing some due diligence, doing the research on them. Could you help us? That's what I do. I said, absolutely, I'm happy to. I went over and spent some time in Egypt with some Interstate folks working on this project. It went pretty well. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in the end, Interstate did not get that deal, but it was a great experience for me. The project went well. And at its conclusion, Interstate came back to me and said, DC, we might have some more work for you if you're interested. This would be in China. What do you think? And I thought, oh, fantastic. I'm a consultant. They want more of me. That's a good thing. I've never been to Asia, certainly never been to China. That could be really cool as a consultant. So we left that door open. They came back to me a couple months later, this is 2010, and said, DC, good news, bad news. Maybe it's not bad news. The good news is we want to talk more about you and us in China. The bad news, or not, is it's not going to be as a consultant. This is a full-time gig. We need your commitment to do this. You would need to come back and work for us, be an employee of Interstate Hotels and Resorts. Once again, it would be my second time. And here's the kicker, we would need to relocate UDC and your family to Shanghai. So this is 2010, so this is after almost 5 years of Cafe Norma, as I've explained, which frankly, as much as it went well, as much as we enjoyed the time, was after 5 years starting to become probably like the biggest ball and chain you can imagine. It had really taken over our lives, and we were sort of past it. It was time to do something else. So the notion of, initially we looked at each other and said, move to China? No, really? I mean, that's flattering and all these wonderful things, but that's not happening. And then we sort of caught ourselves. And again, I take you back to our daughters at the time were probably closer in age maybe to where you guys are now. The point is, this is not about moving to China and on top of everything else that goes along with a move like that, needing to get your kids settled in school, and what about, is there daycare? And we didn't have to worry about any of that. Our daughters could have moved with us, they were part of the deal, so to speak, but in our minds, the equation was never going to include them. They had their lives, They were, in fact, my older daughter was out of college, working here at the time for Credit Suisse. They were set. So because we're close, we talked to them first. And so what do you think? They were kind of like, you guys should explore this. This sounds really interesting. So we did explore it, and fast forward, in November of 2010, we rented our house in Westchester and we moved to China, the two of us, Norma and I. And we lived in Shanghai for 2 years and helped Interstate Hotels and Resorts to launch its independent management business model in China and elsewhere in Asia. Because the model was so new, while the focus was on China, we were also exposed to other parts of Asia as well, which we're going to talk about a little bit. We looked at hotel deals all over Asia. And obviously to do so, we had to travel all over Asia. And I did that, and it was, to say it was fascinating is perhaps the understatement of the century. It was an incredible, incredible experience. So while I had initially wrestled with the notion of giving up my consulting business, Titan, to go back to work for a company, Interstate, and take a quote-unquote traditional job, the reason why I was willing to entertain it, and the reason why we made the move was I knew there was not going to be anything traditional about moving to China and launching a business in China, even though I was working for somebody else. And true enough, after 2 years of living in China, and then another several months where I lived in India afterwards, still for Interstate, to say that it was, an experience was, as I say, it was truly an understatement. It was a tremendous experience. One that frankly I draw from even now, and one that frankly has opened up doors for us as Titan with consulting opportunities in Asia that never ever, of course, would have shown themselves if I hadn't made that move back from 2010 to 2012. I came back to New York in 2012, still working for Interstate, and still responsible for Asia for Interstate. So even though I was living here, I was getting on airplanes and doing the treks across to Asia for 2 weeks at a time, and did that for another 2 years. But it's from home base here. Left Interstate a year and a half ago in earnest, so early 2015, to devote full-time efforts to Titan. And Norma had already started Titan, again, with her work on the project side. So we sort of merged forces, if you will. It wasn't hard to do. We lived together for over 30 years. Relaunched Titan working together, and that kind of brings us to today. And we will talk further about that as we go on, and I look forward to trying to answer any questions that you may have about that. But that's perhaps a not so quick background on how we've gotten where we are today. I'm going to try and take you back to, these are sort of principles, if you will. People talk about building blocks, they talk about pillars. I try not to do that because I think that those are terms that are overused. I'm respectful of them, but this is who we are, okay? We are, as a fundamental definition, we are a consultant/advisor to our clients. We are an industry expert, and I put the quotation marks around that because expert's a little bit subjective too. I will never tell you, this is not me, I'm an expert. I will tell you that I've been in this business for 35 years, and if nothing else, by osmosis, hopefully I've learned a little something. If you, as a potential client, see value in that, then we should talk, but I'm never going to represent myself as an outright expert because I think you, as the client, are a better judge of that than I am. For sure, we need to be a trusted confidant of our clients. We'll talk a little more about that. I'm a partner in your success, and we are more than anything else, and I've felt as though I am this for years, for everybody that I've worked for, even when I worked for traditional companies, a friend of our client's business. What does that mean? I have always, even when I worked for major companies, felt that I had a responsibility to that company that goes beyond my job description. I don't feel that the company that I work for, Hilton, Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, Interstate, et cetera, I don't feel because I work for them, they necessarily own me and my intellectual capacity, but I do feel that it's a two-way street. And I do feel that while I'm there to collect the paycheck, like we all are, we understand that my responsibility to my employer or my client, as the case may be, runs much deeper. And that is an angle, frankly, that we play when we promote Titan to prospective clients, which is you, Mr. or Ms. Client, we are going to agree with you on a scope of work for the project that you need to have done. Of course, we have to agree on that. There have to be guidelines. But you need to understand that we, as Titan, don't stop if we stray from that scope. We are not going to get on the phone and say, Mr. or Ms. Owner, we have a scope of work that pays us X amount of dollars per month, and it covers these things. What we're doing now is outside that scope, so I'm going to be sending you a bill for another X amount of dollars. We don't do that, okay? You could sit back and say, well, that sounds kind of risky. That sounds like you might be underselling yourselves. We haven't run into that yet. I will tell you that if we ran into a situation where our willingness to go beyond our scope of work to the betterment of our clients, if we got to the point where that was being abused, or we frankly just were putting in too much time for the money involved, we'd have a conversation with the client. So they're not asking us to do this, we're choosing to do this. One, because we think it adds value to our relationship as consultants to you, the client. Two, because frankly, we just don't know any other way to work. We are not the types to just say stop. We're not supposed to do that, stop. What we're supposed to do is represent our client's best interests. How do you ever put a line on it? How do you ever put a stop on it? If we see stuff going on that we need to address in the interest of our client, if we stop and say we're not going to touch that, to me it's a contradiction of why we exist. We exist to be better, to make the client better. If we see opportunities for that, we may need to talk about it with them and say, you know what, this is going to require a whole lot more of our time, and we need to sort of revise our scope. That's fair. No one would argue with that. But more times than not, we're just going to go in that direction and see where it leads, because that's what we do. And I will tell you, again, roll your eyes, think whatever you want to think. We live for that. There's basic day-to-day stuff that we do, and we think we're pretty good at it. But the stuff that sort of goes beyond is the stuff that even after 30 plus years in the industry is what really gets us motivated and gets us excited. So if we bump into stuff that isn't in our agreement, but it's an opportunity to help our client even further, we're all over that. That's our business. We choose to do that. Along the way, does that set us apart from our competition? We firmly believe that it does. Coming back. So I've mentioned a bit about this. Who are our clients? They are the owners of upscale and luxury hotels and resorts. We don't have to be just in the luxury and upscale space. We choose to be number one. That's our business model. We gravitate to that number two because frankly, that's our experience. If you were to look year by year for the 30 years that Norma's been doing this, 35 years that I've been doing this, our experience is much more along the lines of upscale and luxury. So it's just sort of knowledge. It's like anything else. It's logical. You gravitate towards that which you know the best. That's where we spend most of our time. So that's where we feel as though we can best represent the interests of potential clients. Our clients are also the developers of luxury and upscale hotels. One and two, owners of and developers of, logically, and in most cases, are the same. Okay? Developers, more times if it's a pre-opening, right? It's a new hotel, such as the 1185 Broadway scenario that I mentioned a few minutes ago. But they are, our clients in all cases are the owners. Because here's what happens. I'll give you a random example of a client of ours. We are responsible for the asset management services for the Ritz-Carlton South Beach, as a for instance. Okay, and have been for several years. The owners, who are our clients, have hired Ritz-Carlton to brand their hotel. It's the Ritz-Carlton South Beach, and to manage their hotel. Ritz-Carlton manages that hotel. Moving Titan, we do not. Many owners, most owners, would say, I've done it. I built the hotel. I've hired a management company. I put a brand on the building. The management company runs the brand. Go forth and prosper. That's the way it works, right? Some owners have, now I'm biased, I'll say, additional vision to recognize the fact that just because they hired a brand to manage their hotel, that doesn't mean that there aren't some stones maybe being left unturned. So using the example of the Ritz-Carlton South Beach, what happens is an owner says, I've got Ritz running my hotel, they've got a great brand, and they do a good job running my hotel. But you know what? I think there's more there. And I think Ritz does things a certain way because they're a particular type of a company. No disrespect, that's who they are. Just as Hilton does things a certain way, just as St. Regis does things a certain way. And that owner says, I want to make sure that Ritz's interests are always completely aligned with mine because it's my money. So I'm going to hire these guys, in this case Titan, to keep, not so much to keep an eye on Ritz because that implies some sort of impropriety, and that's not the case, but to be an additional set of eyes, an additional level of experience to sit across the table from the Ritz guys in this example and talk about what they're doing, to challenge them on what they're doing, to help them to be better. So that's the relationship that we have. Where it gets interesting is that relationship, as it lands in the lap of us as Titan, as the consultant, before I can be effective for the owner, who is my client, when I'm sitting across that table from, in this case, the Ritz folks or any other hotel management company, I have to have credibility with that management company. And I can't have credibility just because I was hired by the owner. I will tell you in our industry, there are plenty of consultants. Very smart, very experienced people whose approach to the business is, okay, you, Mr. or Ms. Hotel Operator, you, Mr. or Ms. Hotel General Manager, and so forth. You're now going to work with my assigned asset manager And you're going to do what they say because they're my assigned asset manager. I'm the owner. So there. That's how it goes, right? No. I don't believe in that. I've sat on the receiving end of that at tables where I was the hotel person and the owner said that to us. That does not build a effective relationship. I am as proud as I possibly can be of the fact that when Titan, Norma and I sit at the table with or without the owners, but with the hotel management team, Ritz Carlton in my example, but it could be anyone. We are talking to them as colleagues, as peers. They are respectful of our experience, of the different things that we've done, and our ability to sit with them in dialogue head to head. We don't play the I'm the owner's rep card. There's no need to because they respect us for who we are and what we know. We don't agree on everything. And yes, if we're in a deadlock, my vote counts more than theirs because I am the owner's rep, but that's not something that I want to play either. And in most cases, I can tell you for years of having done this, I don't play that. We get to where we get to because we work together. I'm very proud of the fact that one of the strongest assets that Titan brings to its ownership clients is the fact that we can talk to the hotel management teams as one of them because we are. We've done this before. And our backgrounds within the industry are so diverse that we can talk to any number of aspects of that hotel operation. So yesterday when I was in South Beach, sitting with the general manager of the Ritz Carlton South Beach, we talked about every facet of his hotel. I can keep up, I can do that. Because after, again, 35 years, hopefully I've learned something, but it's also a matter of style. And I think this is what, hopefully, is most important to you folks as you go through your studies and so forth in consulting. Consulting requires several things. One of the things it requires is a commitment to the fact that we don't know everything, and we need to listen to what the customer has to say. I will tell you again from direct experience, not all consultants in my world, in the hospitality world, play it that way. They don't intentionally come in representing themselves as the smartest person in the room, but it comes across that way, and we've all perhaps had that experience at one time or another. They don't mean to do it, they don't realize it. We don't do that. We don't go to the other extreme and not provide anything and be completely passive, because that would not be doing service to our ownership clients. We jump on opportunities, we don't miss opportunities, and we have down in the dirt conversations with hotel people about what to do with this hotel, because we can, because we know how to do it, we've done it before. We don't know all the answers, but hopefully we're smart enough to at least be able to pose a challenge to convention. I understand you've always done it this way, Mr. Ritz-Carlton, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Marriott, but if you thought about doing it this way, that's our role. And frankly, it's a whole lot of fun, actually. We work with hotel brands and management companies too. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, like, you know that Ritz is actually a renowned brand, right? Like when you're opting them for the management position, and when the owner is opting you as their representative, like, wouldn't that create frictions in the relationship? Like, I don't know how far the decision-making works between you two, how often you make decisions, or what aspects you involve in making decisions, or how often you guys meet. So
Oh my God, what a great question. Thank you. It's huge. Actually, the question has a lot of pieces to it, but it's perfect. Thank you. Yes. That's the short answer. but that's totally unfair.
Very consultative. Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything else? No. Let me continue. It's a great question. Everything you described could happen. In other words, could we sit at a table with Ritz because the owner introduced us as the new consultant, the new asset manager? And could we, from first moment, have a relationship that is more polite, tolerant of one another, as opposed to constructive from a business standpoint? Could that happen? Yeah, absolutely. I would be lying to you if I told you that that had never crept into what we do. It has. The difference, and this is not about selling Titan to you, really, it's not. It's about really trying to be helpful to you as you go through your studies and so forth. The difference is recognizing that that's a risk before it happens, and then therefore, how do you plan for that, right? And you think about anything that you do, when you know there's a risk associated with it, you plan ahead. Same thing. We know going in that we have the advantage of being the owner's rep. And if we want to play that card that, you know what, you need to do what I say because I say so, it's not quite that simple, but you know what, we could do that. But we know enough to know that that's bad strategy, not good for anybody. We also know enough to know that those people on the other side of the table, Ritz, Hilton, Marriott, whatever, we're them. Because up until a couple of years ago, we were. And they know that too, especially today. I mean, you know, when we started this business, it was different. But today, pick your mechanism, whether it's LinkedIn or whatever it is, everybody knows everything about everybody. So before I ever meet my new client management team at the Ritz-Carlton XYZ, they know all about me. Now, that doesn't make me important or anything at all, but they know right away that I'm not just some guy off the street. But to your question exactly, we have to come in with enough humility to know what we know and to know what we don't know, and to establish ourselves as partners with the management team too. We're the ones the owners picked. Yes, that's a fact. But if we don't establish credibility and a true partnership with the operators, we will fail. Because right, wrong, or indifferent, if we don't have the buy-in of the management team on the other side of the table, we will fail. Does that go towards your question? Does that help? It's a big question.
Yeah.
It is. But the bottom line is it's totally up to us, not up to the management company, Ritz, Hilton, whoever. Totally up to us as the consultant to establish that credibility. And not just by saying so. So
Yeah, I would also say, with a big brand, and DC's absolutely right, Ritz-Carlton has what they do for their brand. That may not necessarily be perfect for the South Beach property. And so for an owner, they're like, well, we love being part of this great brand. But we want to also make sure this asset is getting the most out of it possibly can. And so that's where you need someone who's looking at it, not from a brand perspective, which the corporate office at Ritz is looking at, but looking at it from what's the best for this particular asset.
Exactly.
And there will be times where it's exactly aligned and it's not a problem. And there will be times where they say, hold on, this new initiative is not so great for me because this is what's happening in South Beach. And that's where, if you have somebody like DC who has kind of a little bit of experience from both sides, that really helps to make your asset more valuable.
exactly right, John. Thank you. That's really the point, is establishing that relationship that allows that conversation to happen. It isn't who's smarter, who's picked by who makes more money. It's about who's got the ideas that can help. And I will tell you right up front, Ritz, Hilton, whoever we're working with, we disagree as much as we agree on things, but the point is that we can have those conversations. Because going back to a slide somewhere here, I'm not going to try to go there, it's because I'm a friend of your asset. Remember when I said we're a friend of your hotel? Above all else, we as Titan are friends of your asset. We as the consultant are loyal to your asset because we're here to make it better. Did you have another question?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to know if you have an office, like a position there, or is it like you go like once a month or something like that?
We do not maintain an office at any of our asset properties. Depending on the nature of the relationship with the owner, the frequency varies. The baseline for us, because this is a requirement of ours with our ownership plans, is at least once a month for what we refer to as an owner's meeting, which is a review of the profit and loss statement, financial information from the previous month, which always gets into a discussion of the operation and the marketplace. And it's called an owner's meeting. It's bigger than that. But at a minimum, we're there for 2 days a month for that. And then we build other things onto that while we're there. And there could be other things going on too. We're going through a bit of a transition with the property, coincidentally in South Beach, not Ritz-Carlton right now, which has me down there almost every week. I was there earlier this week, I'll be there next week. That's the exception. So the baseline is that minimum of monthly owners meetings that are face-to-face. And then from there, frankly, it's what does the situation require? And that kind of goes back to what I said before. If something changed and all of a sudden it required being there weekly, when initially it was monthly, we might have to go back to the owner and say, we need to think about recutting this deal because the scope has changed. That hasn't really presented itself, but that's a piece of the consulting side too. The consulting side isn't, you have a contract, you go forward and do it, and if it becomes a bad contract, you suck it up. No, not necessarily. If you have credibility with your owner too, your client, you talk about those things too. Okay. This is interesting. This last bullet point is something new for our business. We have been retained as part of a consulting group that is working with a major public company in the United States who are, this has nothing to do with hotels per se. They are building a new office space. Okay. And I can tell you this, I have signed a non-disclosure agreement with them, so I can't tell you a whole lot about particulars, but this is a public company, it's public information. Fannie Mae, who are based in Washington, D.C., and are obviously a huge player in the housing industry, okay, are building a new office building in Washington, D.C. to consolidate what is now about 5 different smaller office buildings, putting everybody under one big and expensive roof in D.C., about 3,200 people. Within their vision, and everything technologically and everything that's going along with what they're doing to build this new building, they are smart enough, in my estimation, to recognize the fact that they want to inject hospitality into their workplace culture. So they know enough to know that they don't have that, they want that. That's all they know. So they've hired Titan as a consultant to help them to inject hospitality into what they do. And that's like a whole another conversation, but it's something that we've started recently. Fascinating. As much as I've been in the hospitality business for 35 years and all this stuff, never in my wildest dreams did I envision working for a public company to help them to bring hospitality to their office day. That's exactly what we're doing. And if you think, it's not so crazy, even as recently as 5 or 10 years ago maybe it was, it's not so crazy. If you think about the Googles of the world, the Amazons of the world, the Microsofts of the world, all you hear about anymore is what they're doing in their office space, what they're doing with their cafeterias, what they're doing with their employee experience. Well, think about it. There's a natural connection to hospitality, but not every employer, not every big company necessarily gets that. Happily for us at Titan, Fannie Mae gets it, and they brought us in to help them with that. So that's something a little bit different, but something because we are independent consultants, we can do whatever we want or not. We choose to say, yeah, we think our expertise can help you, so yeah, we'll sign up with you. That's exactly what we've done. We did that. Just a little bit more about experience because it kind of goes to what we've done and what we do today. We have worked at various times, in our, we being Norma and I, in various places, not always the same. The New York Palace here, the Waldorf here, the Fontainebleau Resort in Miami Beach. I've done a bunch of different multi-property, regional, and corporate jobs for different hotel brands, hotel management companies.
Oops.
Sorry, what is it? Sorry about that. Okay, thanks, sir. In addition to those roles that we've had, those experiences that we've had over the years, we've been fortunate enough to work in some international roles as well, which I mentioned earlier. We've worked in the United Kingdom, elsewhere in Europe, China, India, Cambodia, Japan, Thailand, Caribbean, and South America. So to a certain extent, after 35 years, you would hope that you've had the chance to do some different things. I can tell you not everybody in our industry does. I'm fortunate that I've been able to do a lot of these different things, and it keeps it fresh. And probably, although I've never really thought about this, has something to do with why I love it like I do even after 35 years. I've managed to keep doing different stuff. Something about you can't hit a moving target or something like that. Sorry.
You mentioned about the area and the market. I just wonder, because something is very broad, in which specific part you are very good or your
Okay.
passion
Sure, by all means.
Past projects.
It really varies, but it's a fair question because I can tell you that my own background for most of my years working for others before launching Titan, before being a consultant, my own background is primarily in the hotel world on the sales and marketing and revenue management side of things. That's what I came up through. That's most of what I've done. Again, if nothing else, because of osmosis, I've learned other things along the way, which is why I can be useful as the owner's representative when it comes to areas of finance, when it comes to areas of food and beverage, et cetera, et cetera. But my concentration, if you will, has been sales, marketing, revenue management. My wife Norma, on the other hand, came up through operations. She came up through rooms, through food and beverage, and so forth. Then, as we talked about, did some independent things with Blue Hill and Stone Bar, her own restaurant, and now has crossed over to this project management side of things. So that's her focus, just as sales, marketing, revenue management is mine. We both touch on the other things, sort of in the middle. So we believe that we can be helpful to the owner of almost any hotel with any type of opportunity, any type of challenge. But with that said, we are stronger in those areas because of experience than maybe in other areas. If there was a client out there who was solely interested in improving the performance of their profit and loss statement, their P&L, I promise you we could help them with that, but I'm not going to tell you if that's the scope. If the scope of their role is that narrow, I'm not going to tell you that there aren't people out there, consultants, that might be better qualified just for that. We are best qualified when it's bigger scope that sort of touches everything, because that's kind of what we do. Does that help? Thanks, man.
Actually, I have two questions. So when you do consulting for an owner who just want to build a hotel, who's the third-party company that you work with? And second, how's your contract with that third company? How you're doing the payments?
Okay, so the third company, if you will, is the first company because it's the owner. Okay, our contract is always with the owner. So whether it's a new hotel coming out of the ground, literally like 1185 Broadway that I mentioned, or whether it's an existing hotel, our contract is always with the owner. Now, with that said, how does the contract work? That varies too. Truthfully, most cases, and frankly what we prefer, is to get into a longer term, and when I say longer term, 6 months or more, and it's a monthly retainer, it's a monthly fee. Okay? So that's the norm for us. Again, a huge advantage to being not just a consultant, but an independent consultant, is we can do anything we want. We choose not to look at someone who says, I need somebody to come in and sit in the chair of the general manager of my hotel for 2 weeks because he's going on vacation, he or she's going on vacation. There's business there. There are people that do that. That's not us. And that's our choice. That's a structure that we choose not to participate in. So our greatest value, we believe, to add to our ownership clients is giving us a chance to get in there and get under the hood, so to speak, of your operation and make it better. We're not looking to make it a long-term relationship because we're trying to squeeze more money out of you. We're saying we need a certain minimum amount of time because it's going to take time to find out what's going on. And then it's going to take time to establish strategies to fix that. And then it's going to take time to execute against those strategies. That doesn't happen overnight. Very quick example, because it's a great question. I was talking with a potential client here in New York a month ago, very, very recently. And they need a lot of help. They really do. And we talked about that in great detail. I met with the owner, I met with the general manager of the hotel, and in 1 hour-and-a-half meeting, we got into a lot of the detail, and I could tell a lot of the directions that they need to get into. And if we were to work together, I already had a good idea of how I would start that process. They asked me for a proposal. I gave them a proposal that sort of ramped up and included phases of sitting with their people so I could listen and learn what their issues are, establishing a plan based on what I listened and learned to, and then the execution of that plan. And over the course of all of this, the whole thing ran for about 6 months. That was the proposal, the duration of our agreement. And we have a lot of confidence in what we do, so while we'd like to go longer than 6, when I propose 6, it's absolutely with the thought that, frankly, you're going to be so happy with us after 6 that you'll sign us up again. I'm not going to try and sign you up for a year or 2 or 3, because that's not realistic. Presented the 6 months, they came back and said, DC, we really like you, we really want you to help, but I need something, I can't do 6 months, I need something faster than that. I went back and looked at our scope, pulled some pieces out of it, because I couldn't just reduce the time, because that wouldn't be fair to them or to me. If I just said, oh, okay, 6 months is now 2 months. I couldn't do that. I went back and pulled some things out, went back to them and said, okay, we can cut this down to 4 months. They said, okay, appreciate that. We need this done in a week. That's what they said to me. And I probably did just what you just did, John, hopefully not audibly to them. But I said, you know what? I can't do that. I want to work with you. I still think there's a longer term opportunity here, but for what you need and what we do, that's not a good fit. And I'd rather tell you that now than do a week or whatever it is and take some form of money. It wasn't about the fact that in a week I couldn't make enough money. It wasn't that at all. It was really about knowing as a friend of the hotel, right? I'm still your friend as the owner, even if you haven't signed me up. I have to be honest enough with myself and with you as the client to say, I can't give you what you're looking for. I'll help you to find that if that's useful. I can't. That's probably not the best use of my time either, but I'll do that in the interest of a relationship. But I can't give you what you want, and I need to manage your expectations, so I'm going to tell you now. I can't do that, and let's part as friends. We parted as friends. They get it. They appreciate that. They want to talk in December about an ongoing advisory role that would involve quarterly board of advisors meetings and stuff like that I could be with them in that level. I can do that all day long. That could work. So I didn't know they were going to come back with that. I was prepared to walk away because I couldn't give them what they wanted. And that's okay, and I will tell you that one of the most important things I've learned as a consultant, as an independent consultant, is exactly that. As much as the goal of Titan is to grow Titan, it's got to be the right way. Because if it isn't the right way, it's going to blow back on us. And that short-term gain that we might get in the form of that additional paycheck for a week or 2 or 3, in the long run will work against us. What would we give up with our other client relationships and the other work that we were doing to focus on this thing for a week? It's not worth it. It's a tough call. It's a tough call. We're self-employed. Our home is our office. Our office is our home. We like to eat too, but you know what? Sometimes you need to make the call and just say, that's not a good thing for you, Mr. and Ms. Client. That's not a good thing for us. Long-winded answer to your question, but hopefully that goes there. This is me getting a chance to catch your breath. No particular form or format or organization, but I'd love to hear just by a couple of folks some of the experience that you have. What have you done in the hospitality world? 7 years. Wow, very good. Okay, thank you. Who else? Is
So
there?
I believe it's like for a independent hotel properties. So in delivery time, so my manager and I kind of play like a consultant for each other. So
Okay.
I did a revenue management intern. So one day he asked me about my reservation. He said, why there's nothing posted there? Why the room rate was zero there?
Okay.
So I told him probably because we book this guest from we have 2 hotels. Probably because we book this guest from A hotel
Okay.
to B hotel,
I understand.
and that's what we did. That's what we did for the past couple of weeks. So I thought that may be the reason, but I didn't do a lot of research about it.
Right.
I just told her, and he said, "How can I know that?" And I said, "That's really for like several weeks, and
Yeah.
we did like that." So he said, "No, never make a judgment, never make a conclusion before you really do enough research. What if it was because the guest actually stayed there, but a careless front desk agent forgot to post anything?"
Right. Understand.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Okay. No, that's good. And that's real life. I mean, that stuff happens. You know, I suspect there's not a whole lot of that type of thing in any text or whatever that you may be working from in your studies. That's not a knock on the text, right? But that's the benefit of having the academic piece that you folks are all obviously committed to with the practical piece too. We're going to talk somewhere in here a little bit more about the benefit of experience, because you don't need to hear it from me to know it, but it's just, particularly in my world, it's everything. You know, I will tell you, if I can just sort of segue from that, thank you. You know, I talk to students like yourselves at different universities. I'm fortunate enough not only to do work here at NYU, but Cornell, Florida International University, and so forth, because I like to, frankly, I like these types of interactions. But one of the things I hear frequently is when I come out of school, when I get my degree, I want to be an analyst, I want to be a consultant. That's terrific, I like being a consultant. And yes, I'm probably biased because I've been doing it for too long, the whole thing, 35 years. But what I do know is the most important piece of consulting is having the experience. So with the greatest of respect to you, and I'm not going to ask the question, who looks to come out of here as a consultant, and I wish you well if that's what you want. What I will say is it's difficult to be most effective as a consultant if you don't have the hands-on experience. It's not one versus the other. I'm not saying mine is better than yours. It's difficult to sit with an owner, to sit with a Ritz-Carlton or whomever, like we've been talking about, and have their respect and be able to talk through a challenge if you don't bring some of that experience to it. I strayed, but thank you for the question or the comment. Anybody else an experience that they'd like to throw out there? Okay, I'm flat. Okay, I need a little bit of help on this, and this is casual, this is sort of a shout out kind of thing. What's a consultant?
Consultant is someone who helps people to improve their condition.
Okay, someone who helps people improve their condition. I would agree.
They can bring like an outside perspective into things that's going on,
Yes.
like fresh pair of eyes.
Yes. Fresh set of eyes, absolutely. So,
Someone who advises upper management or decision makers based on experience and research.
perfect. Yeah. And I like, personally, I gravitate towards the term advisor even more than consultant. One, just because I think consultant is so sort of all encompassing in my head anyway. I suppose if you look up the definitions, they're probably very, very close. For me, an advisor implies something closer. A consultant to me is very, almost like sterile, almost institutional. Where an advisor to me implies a closer level of contact of mutual respect. Did you also read, Jeff? Oh, sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot. Okay, let's continue. What is the single most important trait necessary for a consultant to be successful?
Trust.
Pedro, I had something to do. Thank you. We didn't talk about this before.
I'm relieved I could say that.
It's, you know what, it's not so complicated, but truly, right? Sorry, I didn't mean that to be.
It's that guy.
There you go.
Thinking.
Okay, perfect. See, they're paying attention, it's working, right? It's everything. As much as I talk about experience, I mean, that's the practical part. Before we can sit down at the table and I can benefit from your experience, or you can benefit from mine, we have to get to the table. For you as the owner, to hire me as the consultant, the advisor, amongst the things you have to buy into, besides my CV, my resume, right, my background, my references, if you talk to people that I've worked with, you have to trust me. Because I could have the resume of all resumes. I could come to you as a referral from your best friend, Mr. Owner, the person you trust to the moon and back, whatever. If there's any break in the connection that you and I have relative to how you trust me, we're probably not going to do business together. Or if we do business together, there's always going to be, it's not going to be as strong a bond as it needs to be. So, head and shoulders above anything else that anybody tells you, I promise you, it's all about trust. It is all about trust. Let's establish the trust, and then let's get to experience, and let's get into the meat of the thing. If we don't have trust, we're never going to get to those conversations. And if we get to those conversations without trust, they're not going to be useful. I promise you. Very quick little side story, because it goes to the point of trust in the relationship. About 1 million years ago, when I was in my first corporate job, I graduated from individual property jobs as a director of sales and marketing to a regional VP of sales and marketing. And in one of the first owner meetings that I talked about earlier, at the property with the owners of the hotel, the management team of the hotel, and the brand that was managing the hotel, it happened to be Wyndham at the time, and my colleagues for the company that I worked for. We had the meeting, everything went fine, and afterwards, the general manager of the property, who, remember now, worked for the brand, in this case Wyndham, and I'm working as a corporate guy,